So here's the same floating wrench shot that we had before. And we created a tracker for these frames here. Instead of using a roto node to define the area that we want to clone out, let's just use a clone brush with the RotoPaint. So I'm going to drop down a RotoPaint node, P, and I'll just put it right in line with this plate. And I'm going to use clone, offset here, holding down shift and dragging. So I'm cloning from the right side of this, and I'm just gonna paint straight over here. I'm not viewing at the paint node, so I can't see what's going on. There we go. That was awful, so I'll do another one with the larger diameter. Drag over this image. So as I mentioned, you can actually edit the paint stroke. So even though I did a wobbly sort of paint stroke, I can go in and clean it up after the fact. If I click this button here, it will show me the points. And in this case, I'm not so concerned about getting too many points because this is a perfectly straight wire. So really, I'm just going to reduce this down to 2 points. Create a nice straight line. Tidy that up. So now I have a paint stroke instead of a shape open spline tool. I have a paint stroke, and it has all of the features of a paint stroke that are editable after the fact. So if I wanted to change the size of the brush, I could do that interactively here. Brush spacing is how close together it's stamping down those clones. So if you put it very low, you can see it starts to stamp them down really far apart, or very high, it's spacing them far apart. If you put it very low, it's spacing them closer together. And so if you run into performance issues, you can optimize your spacing a little bit by making it a little less aggressive to speed up the speed of your paint strokes. So brush size. And I'm going to hide overlays by hitting Q. See, that's already pretty successful, but right now, you'll notice I did it on the first frame of my shot that I tracked, but it's not following along. But we can use a similar strategy to what we used on the roto. We can either copy the transform into the transform of the shape or the root, either one. Let's just put it straight into the transform of the clone brush itself, because this is a whole separate set of transform controls. I will bring up the tracker, and it's already set to match move node, and I'm control dragging the transform or the translate knob to the translate knob, and it's the only one I really need. The only other thing that really should match is the center of the transform, so I'm going to delete the animation, no animation, and I'm just going to drag that down to copy that value in. Drag it with no keys held down, no qualifiers. So now the two transform centers are the same. The translate is the same because it's driven by an expression, and that paint node will follow along. Now it's disappearing because the paint stroke is only on for one frame. So let's turn it on to operate on all frames. And now for every frame, it's cloning down that area to the left. Now let's say that that is maybe not doing the trick. We could do a similar effect to what we did with the clone roto shape. And I'll just duplicate this clone. And I'll take the same exact strategy. I will hide one of them, so just I can solo it and figure out what I'm doing. And I will go to the clone tab, and you can see this is where it stores its translate. So or the translate for what it's cloning. So the interface or the methodology between the tools is extremely consistent, right? It's using a brush to control this, but it's effectively using the same tab and the same controls, even though it's a brush interface to the clone. So I can just take that and make it brush from the other side. So now it's brushing from this side in. And if I wanted to edit the shape for this again, I can turn on overlays. I'm hitting Q. And I'm not totally stoked with where this shape is landing maybe, so I will make sure that I'm getting it in a good place. I'm going to keyframe it a little bit here. And I'll move forward a bit and see when it slips. And maybe I'll keyframe it a bit there to scoot it over. So it's cloning there. And then same problem we had before, my roto or my tracker started losing its place. So I will keyframe it here and then keyframe it again to compensate for the failure of the tracker here. Touch it up a bit. There we go. Now it's cloning in. This particular one is cloning in some of the knob to the left, because it's pulling from the left over, right? And then let's solo this clone for a bit, and we'll see it had the same problem. So let's take the same strategy. We'll create a key here, and then as it slips off, we will create another key here to compensate for the slipping tracker. Kind of loses its place a little bit there too. And we have available to us all the same blends that we had in the roto. So if I wanted to, I'm going to hide overlays again by hitting Q. If I wanted to fade out this top brush stroke a little bit, I can use its opacity control to mix and match, and using the exact same strategy, trying to take this average or something that averages out the dark on one side and the dark on one side here and the light on the other side here, so that the paint stroke doesn't give itself away with a ghostly clone-like thing in the air. And there we have it. A paint fix with 2 clone brush strokes. So it's a different interface, but the exact same strategy, using tracker and an automated translate to move the brush along for each frame and then stamp down part of the frame for that frame. And then these little areas like here, by tuning it more, this little mess up here, you could improve the result right out of the box, and then any other little touch-ups you needed to do, you could do an additional brush stroke or something to touch it up. Or for cases like this where it reveals through for a couple frames, you could manually paint it in using brush strokes. One frame brush strokes. There you have it.